ورحمة الله وبركاته.
How are you?
Alhamdulillah. We have very few.
بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وآله وصحبه ومن والاه. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. So we're continuing our journey with the Quran. Again, something that we should be doing consistently and regularly. This is what Quran was meant to be book of guidance that Muslims individually and collectively would be studying it and reflecting on it all the time. So if you don't forget to eat one day, also you shouldn't forget to feed your soul and your spirit. And the Quran is the best food for your the best spiritual food. It actually does two things at the same time, which is there is rarely anything else that does the same thing, which is it's a food for the soul and food for the mind and for thought. So when you study the Quran and reflect, you broaden your knowledge and you revive your spirituality at the same time, which hardly anything else can do that. Inshallah, we're going to continue the same style and reflecting on verses and stopping more on verses that are more relevant for us or more foundational. And we are now at verse 124. وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ بِكَلِمَاتٍ فَأَتَمَّهُنَّ قَالَ إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا قَالَ وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي قَالَ لَا يَنَالُ عَهْدِ الظَّالِمِينَ. The Quran is amazing, and every verse of it is really loaded with meaning and awakening. When Abraham's Lord tested him with certain commandments which he fulfilled, he said, I will make you a leader of people. Abraham asked, and will you make leaders from my descendant too? And God answered, my pledge does not hold for those who do evil. And in two lines in the Quran, in one verse, in one short conversation, there are very fundamental principles that were established and reinforced. First of all, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Quran says about him in Surah Al-Najm, Ibrahim al-Nabi Wafa. Ibrahim fulfilled the job or the commandments, passed all the tests successfully. He was praised in Quran, and among the best, probably one of the best way he was praised when he was declared to be close friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَاتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ خَلِيلًا. And in these days, we are about to celebrate one major event in history of humanity, which is the test that Ibrahim had to go through, which is it's hard even to imagine it, never mind to take that test. And Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ismail passed it very successfully, to the point that thousands of years and people are still celebrating that all over the world. Ibrahim alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala selected him in this verse to be Imam al-Nas, leader of the people. Adam alayhi salam is the father of people, but to be the leader of people is even probably higher. Because father of people is something that is probably more natural, but leader of people is something that is earned. إِنِّي جَعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا. And the Quran tells us that these prophets are a human being, so they immediately think about their descendant. And will you make leaders from my descendant too? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it clear, because this idea is going to be discussed extensively in the next verses, that it doesn't go by descendant. It's basically, it's a mission and a message. Whoever takes it seriously and commit to it will inherit it. It has nothing to do with your descendants. It has nothing to do with your children or grandchildren or anything. And this is an idea that is, unfortunately, it's a very present in the history of humanity, which we discussed last time, that a group of people think that they are better than others because of who they are. It's still there. Even among Muslims nowadays, many Muslims have that complacent attitude, because they think they are better than others because of who they are. And Quran made it clear, debating other communities, and made it clear for Muslims that it's about what you do, not about who you are. Even when Quran says that this is the best community sent to humanity, first of all, it was the meaning was clear that you were sent to serve humanity, and then it was immediately qualified by saying, because you enjoin that which is good and you forbid that which is evil. It's not because you claim to be Muslims. It's not because you are born in a certain place, or you carry certain citizenship or race or anything, but because of what you do. Inna akramakum inda Allahi atqakum. That the best amongst you is the more pious. فضل على عربي على جميل إلا بالتقوى. It was very much emphasized that the very fundamental principle in Islam, that people are their worth or their value has nothing to do with things they have no control over. It's because of what they do. So when Ibrahim alayhi salam asked for this honor to be extended to his children, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that's not a guarantee. It's not to all your children. Those who will not fulfill the job, those who will not live up to the expectations, will not. This honor is not going to be extended to them. لا ينال عهد الظالمين. My judge does not hold for those who do evil. So, because you know that the Jews claim to be descendant of Ibrahim alayhi salam and take honor in that. The Arabs of that time in the Arabian Peninsula, they do the same thing, and Quran will make it clear in these verses that it's not. You qualify for the honor of Ibrahim alayhi salam and legacy if you follow his way. It's not because you are just his descendant. وَإِذْ جَعَلْنَا الْبَيْتَ مَثَابَةً لِلنَّاسِ وَأَمْنًا وَاتَّخِذُوا مِنْ مَقَامِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ مُصَلًّى وَعَهِدْنَا إِلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْمَاعِيلَ أَنْ طَهِّرَ بَيْتِيَ لِلطَّائِفِينَ وَالْعَاكِفِينَ وَالرُّكَّعِ السُّجُودِ. We made the house a resort and sanctuary for people, saying, take the spot where Abraham stood as your place of prayer. We commanded Abraham and Ismail, purify my house for those who walk around it, those who stay there, and those who bow and prostrate themselves in worship. So that's the status of the house, sacred house, Mecca, Kaaba. It's a sanctuary, it's a resort for people, it's a place to praise and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. and it was meant to be and purify my house for those who are remember. And this is I don't know whether these verses were revealed at that time or not, but as you know, Kaaba and Kaaba was surrounded with those idols, and Quran is reminding us that it was meant to be pure. It was meant to be a sanctuary and place where people devotedly worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وإذ قال إبراهيم رب اجعل هذا بلدا آمنا وارزق أهله من الثمرات من آمن منهم بالله واليوم الآخر. Now Ibrahim alayhi salam, subhanallah, yani, it's as a human being, on one hand is said that he wanted this honor to be extended to his children. On the other hand, now he wanted to he was praying for the faithful, for the believers. The verses, that's 126. Abraham said, my Lord, make this land secure and provide with produce those of its people who believe in God and the last day. Allah said, as for those who disbelieve, I will grant them enjoyment for a short while. That's a very fundamental principle here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is correcting Ibrahim again, corrected him in the beginning that this is not, it doesn't go by descendant, it goes by commitment and devotion. And now, when it comes to this worldly life, it's not exclusive for the believer. قَالَ وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَأُمَتِّعُهُ قَلِيلًا. So Ibrahim alayhi salam prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide for those who believe in Allah in the Day of Judgment. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him that's not limited to the faithful. This worldly life is for everybody, and it goes by different rules. This worldly life, whoever works hard, they will reap the fruits of their work. Whether believer or non-believer. So it's correcting the understanding of Ibrahim alayhi salam. The legacy of carrying the mission does not go by descendant. The provision of this worldly life is not limited to faithful. So, establish things, very clear, set the record very clear. ثم اضطروا إلى عذاب النار وبئس المصير. So, this worldly life is for everybody, but those who reject faith, then they'll be subject to the torment of the fire and an evil destination. وإذ يرفع إبراهيم القواعد من البيت وإسماعيل ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, verse 127, Ibrahim and Ishmael built up the foundation of the house. They prayed, our Lord, accept this from us. You are the all-hearing, the all-knowing. Of course, reinforcement of Tawheed, reinforcement of the belief in Allah, the reinforcement of the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reinforcement of the idea that those who do good, they will be rewarded, and those who reject faith, they will pay the price. This is something it's reoccurring in the Quran, recurring theme. Ibrahim alayhi salam, this is the proper attitude of a believer. Whatever you are doing in this life, you always have that concern and hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts. Fortunately, something nowadays people take it for granted. People seem to take everything for granted. But as you can see, even those who are building the house of Allah, they're still praying for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept what they do. And they are praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and confirming and reaffirming their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ربنا واجعلنا مسلمين لك ومن ذريتنا أمة مسلمة لك. That's beautiful. Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ismail, this is also the proper attitude. Make us devoted to you, our Lord, make us devoted to you, and make our descendant into a community devoted to you. subhanallah, the proper attitude of a believer is you want to be devoted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also you love and you dream and you yearn for your children to be also devoted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's not something that is very common today. Alhamdulillah, there are people who really work hard for their children to be devoted, and they try their best, and this is a priority for them. But there are people, as you know, there are people who are more concerned about the materialistic future of their children, which is nothing wrong with it. It's actually needed, it's important, but you don't find the balance between, for example, caring also for the faith and character of their children, and but mostly about their career, and that's, again, I'm not saying that this is not important. I'm saying that just we need the balance, and we need really to give priority for the faith and raising children with the solid faith and solid character. In parallel, we don't have to choose. In parallel with raising them successful in their study and in their career. So you can see ريتنا أمة مسلمة لك اجعلنا مسلمين لك ومن ذريتنا أمة مسلمة لك وأرنا مناسكنا وتب علينا. طيب، تقبل منا، الآن تب علينا. Make our descendants into community devoted to you. Show us how to worship and accept our repentance. This is people who are driven by love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and concern that Allah may or may not be pleased with them. So show us how to worship, and show us how can we be better, how can we get closer to you, how can we improve our status with you, and show us how to worship and accept our repentance. Amazing. أرنا مناسكنا وتب علينا. And He show us the way that leads us to your pleasure and to make you pleased with us. And تب علينا, and accept our repentance. إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. So السميع العليم, تواب الرحيم. All these, you are the ever-relenting, the most merciful. All of these are meant for us when we read the Quran to reinforce our tawheed and our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our relationship with Him. Because the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are essential pillars and component of our relationship with Him. Now comes the verse that was repeated here twice and in other places in the Quran, in Surah Ali Imran and in Surah Al-Jumu'ah. ربنا وابعث فيهم رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياتك ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة ويزكيهم إنك أنت العزيز الحكيم. So إنك أنت السميع العليم, إنك أنت التواب الرحيم, إنك أنت العزيز الحكيم. 3 consecutive verses. Our Lord, make a messenger of their own rise up from among them. And of course, this Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered this prayer and supplication from Ibrahim alayhi salam by sending Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to recite your revelations to them, teach them the scripture and wisdom, and purify them. You are the mighty, the wise. So you can see in 3 verses of the Quran 6 names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala: Sami' al-Alim, Tawwab al-Rahim, and Aziz al-Hakim. What is this? This is a verse again that was repeated in this surah. have then Surah verse 151, and then in Surah Al-Jumu'ah. And in Surah Al-Imran. Al-Imran is on Al-Imran 164. لقد من الله على المؤمنين إذ بعث فيهم رسولا من أنفسهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين. So take note of this. It is Surah Al-Baqarah. Surah Al-Baqarah, it came as in the form of dua from supplication from Ibrahim alayhi salam, verse 129. And then in the same surah and chapter, verse 151. And then in the next surah, Surah 3, verse 164. And then in Surah Al-Jumu'ah, which is Surah Al-Jumu'ah, Jumu'ah is Surah 62. It's Surah 62. Al-Jumu'ah, Surah 62, and it is verse بعث في الأمين رسولا منهم. It's the second verse actually. So you can see why this verse is important, and I believe that this is one of those foundational verses that Muslims should memorize and master. Because this is a verse that states or lists the job description of the Prophet ﷺ. You may say why this is important for us. It's important because the Rasul ﷺ is our role model, because this is your job description and my job description. Because part or as we believe that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is the last and final and universal messenger, his job is the job of every one of his followers. So whatever was mentioned about the Prophet ﷺ, that's your job description. What does the Prophet do? يتلو ربنا وبعث فيهم. So to recite your revelation, first of all, the messenger from among them. This is also a very important principle that was emphasized in Quran. The messenger from among them. وإلى عاد أخاهم هودا وما أرسلنا من رسول إلا بلسان قومه ليبين لهم. So the messengers are sent from their own people. That's very essential. Very essential because one, for people to accept such a heavy message, they must know you. I mean, there should be some relationship, there should be some trust. And also for you to be able to deliver this message effectively, you should know the people. I mean, if you take someone from the United States here, no matter how knowledgeable you are, and you take this person to a different society with different language, with different culture, probably their ability to deliver the message will be very weak, even though they might be very effective here. And vice versa. I mean, someone from a Muslim country or an Arab country or another culture, and might be very knowledgeable, very capable of conveying the message in a very effective way. You bring them to the United States, even if they know English, they may not be able to do a good job simply because they have no clue about the culture, and even if they speak English, they may not be able to speak American yet. So this religion is meant to be always and it become indigenous. It is meant for its people to make it not to keep it a foreign religion or a foreign message. It's their job to root it and make it an indigenous religion, meaning that you are an American who happens to be Muslim, not the other way around. It's not like you are a Muslim who happens to be living in America. Now, that might be okay for the first generation, but for future generations and for people who choose or convert to this deen, we should really try to emphasize this idea and this identity, because this is what it is meant to be. This religion is not meant to be limited or attached to a particular culture and then transfer it together with that culture around the world. No, it has to be decoupled from any culture and has to be meshed with the new culture to produce a unique identity and coherent identity, and so that we don't have people who have an identity crisis. ربنا وَعَطِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِنْهُمْ, from among them. Right? To do what? This messenger. What is the job of the prophet that we say and we claim and we were instructed to take him as our role model? What does he do? The prophets, يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِكَ. He recites your revelations to them. Of course, there is major difference here, even though we should be doing the same job. But when it comes to reciting, that's what we're doing now, reciting revelations. The Prophet ﷺ used to receive the revelation and then he recites it. Now we don't receive revelation, we get the revelation from the Quran, but also it should be our job to recite revelations to people. And then it's not only reciting, because the next verse is make it even more clear. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ, and to teach them the scripture and wisdom. And I like to translate hikmah to wisdom rather than all the limiting translations in some tafsir that says wisdom here means the sunnah. Wisdom means wisdom. Wisdom, the sunnah is wisdom, but wisdom can be much more general. Wisdom can include science, can include physical sciences, social sciences. Anything that can help you in this life or in the hereafter is part of the wisdom. So why limiting it? وَيُعَلِّمُهُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. So learning and teaching the Quran, it's the job of prophets. Anyone who's serious about taking the Prophet ﷺ as a role model should be in the business of learning and teaching Quran. And teaching, by the way, it's not having a halaqa of memorization. It's not having a halaqa of tajweed Quran. All of these are good and great. Or having a halaqa of recitation, like people sit down and start reading the page of the Quran. All of this is great. But more importantly than all of this, and before all of this, is to study the Quran. Learning and teaching. خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه. You learn and teach. You learn the meaning of a verse and you share it with people around you. That's what the Prophet was doing. If you claim, and you and I know nowadays what does it mean in the minds of many people to take the Prophet as a role model. Make my beard very long, wear an armor, and I'm like the Prophet. That's it. Yeah. I mean, nobody can compete with me. I'm like the Prophet. And I'm not making fun of anybody. I'm not belittling, but that's not what the Prophet is all about. That imama was the imama of the Prophet ﷺ and the imama of Abu Jahl. And everybody at that time in that part of the world, they were dressing the same way. Yeah. So that's not what makes the Prophet ﷺ special. Yeah. That's not what where we are supposed to focus when it comes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I always mention those 4 things that we should be focusing when we study the seerah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is his faith and relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and worship. It is his worship too, quality and intensity of his worship. And yes, you should be comparing yourself to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and take his worship as your standard, as the standard of your worship. You may never be able to get there, but that's fine. Take it as, it's like students who rarely get 100%, but the 100% remains always as the standard to evaluate performance. Character of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Everybody testified, friends and enemy and close people to the Prophet ﷺ, that his character were perfect, impeccable. So you want to be like the Prophet ﷺ, work on your worship, work on your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, work on your character, and then work on your dedication to the cause. Dedication that Rasul ﷺ, from the time he was commissioned to be a prophet, which corresponds to the time you became a Muslim. That's the same thing. He never, missed an opportunity. He actually used to create the opportunity to deliver the message, and would talk to anybody who was willing to listen, and approach people and tell them, convey his message very confidently, in the face of mockery, in the face of harassment, but none of this deterred him or discouraged him from keep talking to people, because he was very certain that what he has was the truth, and he was very compassionate toward people. And that's what drives the da'wah process, or delivering the message. It should be the certainty that what you have is the truth, so that you will not be shaken by any reaction. And then the second is to be very compassionate toward people. That's what drives you because you are caring about people, and you like to share this good news that you have, and to find the way that you found, and to know their Creator and their Lord, and to worship Him because of the happiness that you find, because of that great relationship that you have with Allah, that you want the whole world to know about it and to have the same thing. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ. So learning and teaching Quran. Tell me how many people in this world are learning and teaching Quran, even though this should be everybody should try. Maybe some people may be able to do more than others in the way of learning and teaching, but it should be the job of everybody. Learn and teach Quran. Learn and teach Quran. Teach it to people around you. Learning and teaching Quran is something that we need to revive, because you can see the job description of Rasul ﷺ is very short, and this is part of it. And this is an essential part. We're talking about 3 or 4 components. One major component is to learn and teach Quran. Now, wisdom. Learning and teaching wisdom. Now, wisdom is very broad. Wisdom, knowledge. Learning and teaching anything that is useful to people. So, as a Muslim, if you are serious about following the Prophet ﷺ and taking him as your role model, you should be in the business of learning and teaching, not only Quran, but also learning and teaching knowledge, wisdom. Anything that you can learn, first of all, you learn for yourself. You don't learn to brag. You don't learn to show off. You learn to implement. But once you learn and implement, now you are in a position to share and teach. يعني الحكمة, wisdom. You should not let a day pass by without learning something new, and hopefully without sharing something new with people. So learning and teaching, something that Muslims have abandoned big time. It's very important. Learning and teaching Quran, totally abandoned almost. And learning and teaching knowledge and wisdom, it's also totally abandoned. And we did not, as Muslims, we did not end up in this situation by coincidence. Yeah. We ended up in this situation because we abandoned our mission, we abandoned our job, and this is the job description: learning and teaching Quran, learning and teaching wisdom. That's what we should be doing. Wisdom, anything. You learn about something, about health, to be healthy, about diet, about exercise, about parenting, about career, about finances, about anything, about civic information, awareness, public education, anything. You should be, again, the beautiful description of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam: al-hikmatu dalatul mu'min أينما وجدها فهو أحق الناس بها. يعني, you can't hope for a better description than this. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that wisdom is the last property of a believer. Yani, last property. You and I know when you lose something, how we, especially if it is important, is your wallet, your car key, whatever you lose, you always, where did I leave it? Let's call this lost and found. Let me go back and check in this place, etc. It's something that you cannot let it go. It's something that is preoccupying them, preoccupying you. So, al-hikmatu dalatul mu'min. Show me nowadays how many Muslims fit this description, yeah, of someone who is thirsty for knowledge and on the look for knowledge wherever it is, and on daily basis checking some good sources. It's very important that people spend so much time on social media and get very little from it, even though the social media is full of things that are very, very useful nowadays. In a few minutes or in short time, you can get a good idea about things just by watching a couple of YouTube's videos, even they are short. Sometimes I fix certain things just by watching YouTube video. Things that I used to think that they're so complicated, and you need an expert to fix them, and then you just watch the second video, 4 minutes here, 5 minutes there, and then follow it, and suddenly you become maintenance engineer. I'm just mentioning this as an example, but there are so many things you can learn about every aspect of life. Health, spousal relationship, parenting, history, how this world is functioning, whether the physical world or the human societies, politics, international relationships, public affairs. It's amazing how much you can learn, and in a short period of time, and so accessible. But even when we had this, unfortunately, as I said, nowadays I know that in many Muslim societies, people spend hours and hours every day on social media, like they used to spend hours and hours on satellite TV, and probably they still are combining both. It's like a full-time job. Some people spend probably several hours or 8 hours a day or 4 hours or 2 hours, whatever. But unfortunately, in most of the cases, they got nothing because they are simply surfing and following trivial things and not learning. So if there is something that we're going to learn today is that it's about time for us to fix this. It's about time for us to get into the job of learning and teaching Quran and learning and teaching wisdom. That's what the Prophet did, and that's what we should be doing. And then there is the last component. So learning and teaching Quran, learning and teaching wisdom, which is very broad, and to be someone who is on the look and very thirsty for knowledge, because it is like a lost property. Al-hikmatu dallatul mu'min. And then وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ.
Dr. Anusi, I have a question, actually a comment. Unfortunately, there are so-called imams out there that say, oh, what is meant with al-hikmah, يعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة, they limit it only to the sunnah, ahadith. So that's prevalent out there, and they just try to limit it to sunnah. I'm sure you came across that. I just wanted to see if you had any comment on.
Yeah, I said it today, and they said it repeatedly that I don't accept that. I don't like it. It's restricting something unnecessarily. Sunnah of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is great. And actually, that's the Sunnah of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which is learning and teaching Quran and learning and teaching wisdom. But limiting hikmah, wisdom, to saying Sunnah, there is no need for it. I mean, it's just you take something that is broad and you make it narrow. I mean, learning the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and his model and his life and his personality is essential in Islam. But wisdom is much bigger than that. Wisdom, I mean, learning science is a wisdom, learning about medicine is a wisdom, learning about social sciences is a wisdom. So I don't know why they do it, and I hope that that should be fixed, this misunderstanding, that teaching the book and wisdom, leave it as is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called it hikmah. There is no point in reducing it to wisdom. And by the way, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not need to teach sunnah, because he was living among them. He was living among them, and his practical sunnah is there. So the model was walking among them and living among them. So, but يعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة and the Quran, like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Even though Quran is not a book of science, but it has some good, it has a lot of encouragement of people to do science and to contemplate and to reflect and etc. And same thing for the Sunnah of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, وَيَعْلِمُهُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ, let's leave it as wisdom, and teach our children the very important idea that there is no such thing as Islamic knowledge and non-knowledge. Any that is useful is Islamic, and you should be trying to acquire any knowledge that is useful for you in this life and in the hereafter. And we should eliminate that dichotomy that Muslims have largely neglected learning and reading, and then those who do reading, they limit themselves to Islamic books because they were told this is better knowledge, that's the real knowledge. That's not true. When Muslims understood their deen properly, they excelled in all aspects of science, physical sciences and social sciences. So probably this meaning, by emphasizing that it is wisdom, and it means that anything that is useful for you in this life and thereafter, we can help fixing that idea of that you should be reading only books, Islamic books written by Muslims, and it's about Islam, and there is no such thing. You read anything that is useful, helpful for you, can make you a better person. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his sunnah and the Quran itself is not a book of science. When you want to learn science, you're not going to go to the Quran or to the Sunnah. When you want to learn medicine, you're not going to go to the Quran or to the Sunnah of the Prophet. And that doesn't take away from the greatness of the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasul. They were not meant to spoon feed us and make everything ready for us. They were meant to encourage us to discover this word and the rules that Allah has embedded in this word. The word Yuzakkihim, that's a huge concept. Some of you know that I emphasize this extensively. One word, but one word is, it's not only the verse that is foundational. Is this word of tazkiyah is foundational. قد أفلح من تزكى قد أفلح من زكاها. So tazkiyah, also another fundamental concept that was unfortunately misunderstood or understood very superficially. Even here they said purify them. Actually, the meaning of tazkiyah is not only purification. The meaning of tazkiyah is more, if you're doing it for yourself, it is self-development. If you're doing it to others, it's more mentorship, more than purifying them. Purifying them is important. Purifying their faith, their feelings, their thoughts, their minds, their hearts, etc. Yes, it's an essential part of self-development or mentorship, but that shouldn't be limited to that. Zakihim, I read that literal explanation or definition of tazkiyah from Arabic perspective, linguistically, is إبلاغ الشيء كماله. Which we nowadays in today's language we say to help a person realize their full potential or fulfill their potential. That's what the meaning I like for tazkiyah, and I believe that spiritual development is an essential component of mentorship and mentoring and self-development, but self-development is much bigger than just spiritual. So Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, learning and teaching Quran, learning and teaching wisdom, and now what? Self-development and mentorship. And Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his life was centered around, he's someone who had a mission, has a life mission, of course, and then he was centered around these four components. And practically speaking, that's what he does. Learning and teaching, self-development, and mentorship. Mentorship is something, by the way, both of them are neglected among Muslims. Unfortunately, you hardly find a Muslim who has a self-development plan. Like, you leave this person today and you meet this person after 6 months or 1 year, and then you find that there has some significant improvement, very visible. It's hardly the case, very unfortunate. Stagnation, subhanAllah, we fell in love with stagnation. Stagnation at the individual level, at the community level, at the society level, it's amazing. So we should really, tazkiyah, it's basically you should be on a path of continuous improvement. Every day you're learning something new and you are incorporating it. Or you're getting rid of something bad. So you are someone who is really on a continuous improvement path. Tazkiyah. It's very unfortunate also that sometimes when we do any effort, we do it on the facade, to impress people. So we look good, but we don't work on the inside and make the whatever appearance or the facade, it's just a mirror reflection of who you are. People, unfortunately, they are very obsessed with the image and the impression, and They work on that at the expense of working on on themselves. Actually, you work on your faith, you work on your character, you work on your knowledge, not to impress anybody. You work just to be a better person, just to be someone who has a better understanding of this world and become a better person and have a clearer vision. And this is something that needs to be revived. Learning and teaching, self-development and mentoring. If you find someone who is doing none of this or very little, and then focusing on other things and claim that they are following the model of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they miss the point. You want to follow the model of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you work on your worship, quality and intensity. You work on your character. You work real character, not the facade. You work on your dedication and contribution to the cause. You try to maximize your impact and your contribution to the greater good and to help people become better people. Of course, while you're working on yourself to become a better person. You want to be like the Prophet, you learn about his leadership model. His model of building and leading the most effective and impactful community and movement in history. And you want to be like the Prophet in your everyday language, everyday life. You should be in the business of learning and teaching, self-development and mentorship. So this verse is essential. It's really, I find it foundational. Yes, in this context, and this time came as a supplication from Ibrahim alayhi salam, but that's the way of the Quran. The Quran is not always direct. It's sometimes it conveys the message in a indirect way, but then we see it in verse 152 confirming كما أرسلنا فيكم رسولا منكم يتلو عليكم آياتنا ويزكيكم ويعلمكم الكتاب والحكمة ويعلمكم ما لم تكونوا تعلمون. As you should be. You want to be like the Prophet, that's what you should be doing. Teaching people things they don't know. And in order to teach, you have to learn. And mentoring people and uplifting people. And in order to do that, you have to develop yourself. So يتلو عليكم آياتنا ويزكيكم ويعلمكم الكتاب والحكمة. And in the other two places also came in that context, with that sequence, which is لقد من الله على المؤمنين إذ بعث فيهم رسولا من أنفسهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة. And in Surah Al-Jumu'ah, هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة. So, I mean, this is a verse that وإن كان من قبل في ضلال مبين, both in Ali Imran and in Al-Jumu'ah. This is a verse that every Muslim should know very well, master it, and more importantly, apply it, because that's the job description of the Prophet ﷺ. And we are the heirs of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the followers who claim to take him as a role model. If that's the case, then we should try to be like the Prophet ﷺ. ومن يرغب عن ملة إبراهيم إلا من سفه نفسه ولقد اصطفيناه في الدنيا وإنه في الآخرة لمن الصالحين. Come back to say about Ibrahim alayhi salam that it's about those who but a fool would forsake the religion of Abraham. We have chosen him in this world, and he will rank among the righteous in the hereafter. So let's say this is telling the Arabs, telling the Jews, everybody, that Ibrahim alayhi salam is not a genetic thing that you inherit. It's a mission, it's a job, it's a status, it's a direction. ومن يرغب عن ملة إبراهيم لمن سفه نفسه. That's for everybody, for the Arabs at that time who claimed to be following the way of Ibrahim alayhi salam or descendant of Ibrahim, and also for the people of the book that also try to attach themselves to Ibrahim alayhi salam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making it clear here that you want to be descendant, honor the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam, follow his way. وَلَقَدْ اصْطَفَيْنَاهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا. We have chosen him in this world, and he will rank among the righteous in the hereafter. A lot of praise for Ibrahim alayhi salam, yani in the Quran. And then Quran explains why Ibrahim has this status. وَإِذْ قَالَ لَهُ رَبُّهُ أَسْلَمْ قَالَ أَسْلَمْتُ لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. إِذْ قَالَ لَهُ رَبُّهُ أَسْلَمْ قَالَ أَسْلَمْتُ لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. His Lord said to him, devote yourself to me. See, Aslam, the meaning? Devotion. Not an empty claim. Devote yourself to me. Abraham replied, I devoted myself to the Lord of the universe. إذ قال له ربه أسلم قال أسلمت لرب العالمين. إذ جاء ربه بقلب سليم. قال له ربه أسلم قال أسلمت لرب العالمين. ووصى بها إبراهيم بنيه ويعقوب. It's reminding Ibrahim, reminding the Arabs, and Yaqub, reminding Bani Israel. يا بني إن الله اصطفى لكم الدين فلا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. And commanded his sons to do the same. Ibrahim alayhi salam commanded his sons to do exactly the same. قال له ربه أسلم قال أسلمت رب العالمين. ووصى بها إبراهيم بنيه ويعقوب to do the same as did Jacob. My sons, God has chosen your religion for you, so make sure you devote yourselves to him to your dying moments. يعني قال وصى بها إبراهيم بنيه ويعقوب يا بني إن الله اصطفى لكم الدين فلا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. That Ibrahim alayhi salam commanded his sons to do the same as did Jacob, all telling their children that Allah has chosen the religion for you, so make sure that you don't, make sure you devote yourselves to him to your dying moments until the end. فلا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون, that you stay the course until the last minute. And then subhanAllah, speaking about the last minute, immediately Quran in a very eloquent way goes to the moment when Yaqub, Jacob, was dying. And كنتم شهداء إذ حضر يعقوب الموت إذ قال لبنيه ما تعبدون من بعدي قالوا نعبد إلهك وإله آبائك إبراهيم وإسماعيل وإسحاق إلها واحدا ونحن له مسلمون. Were you there to see when death came upon Jacob, when he said to his sons, what will you worship after I'm gone? So that's what was worrying Jacob in that moment when he was dying, about his children. Again, that brings us back to وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي, that Ibrahim alayhi salam wanted his children to be devout worshipper of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. مِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِنَا أُمَّةً مُسْلِمَةً. You can see the theme that also when Ibrahim and Ismail were praying to Allah, were praying for their children to be devoted worshippers, and now Yaqub is worried about his children after him. What will you worship after I'm gone? They replied, we shall worship your God. and the God of your fathers, Abraham, Ishmael, Ishaq, one single God, we devote ourselves to him. So there is no need for all these complications and divisions between Ishaq and Ismail, etc. These are the sons of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and that's what Yaqub is confirming here. So did not distinguish between Ibrahim and Ismail, and his children did not distinguish. Only later on this distinction happened. The children of Bani Israel, the children of Yaqub, was talking about, we're going to worship your Lord and the Lord of your fathers, Ibrahim, Ismail, Ishaq. It's one Lord. He is one Lord, and نحن له مسلمون. I will conclude with this verse. تلك أمة قد خلت لها ما كسبت ولكم ما كسبتم ولا تسألون عما كانوا يعملون. This verse, which was repeated, is going to be repeated just few verses down the road, verse 141. So it is verse 134, and was repeated exactly word for word in verse 141. I find this verse also very fundamental in terms of establishing an important concept that unfortunately we are missing it. That community passed away. What they earned belongs to them, and what you earn belongs to you, and you will not be answerable or accountable for their deeds. It's an amazing idea. SubhanAllah, and when I read this verse and I see all this Sunnah and Shia thing, and people are still, until like after 1400 years or more, are still fighting that fight, and talking about who is right and who is wrong, and with whom are you siding, and etc. Like very, very unfortunate. Quran is guiding you in one direction, and you are following in a completely different direction. Same feeling I have when I see somebody trying to revive the Khilafah in the same way, like, there is an absolute ruler people will obey him blindly, and he has the absolute power, and we just call him Khalifa, and some people want to revive that and bring it back. يا أخي تلك أمة قد خلت. And then I have the same feeling when we skip and overlook all our failures nowadays and our very limited contribution to the world and to humanity and to science and etc. And then we always sit down and then start talking about our ancestors and what they achieved. Actually, it's about time to learn this principle. تلك أمة قد خلت. You tell me the big fitna between تلك أمة قد خلت. You tell me about now we have a great history, we should and always we can always talk about. I will tell you show me what did you do now? Because we're not going to be stuck in history, and whether it is something bad or good, history is good only for lessons. Just learn. لقد كان في قصصهم عبرة. Just learn lessons from history, and that's the only thing that we don't do. That's why you see mistakes are being repeated all the time. Sometimes by the same people in the same generation. The only thing that we are supposed to do about history, we're not doing it, which is to learn lessons. And everything that we are not supposed to do about history, which is to get stuck in it, or to be always bragging about history to make up for our failure to achieve anything now, that's wrong. Or to try to revive it, or bring history back to life. History is history. تلك أمة قد خلت لها ما كسبت ولكم ما كسبتم. And I went all the way to say, you tell me that Ali ibn Abi Talib was probably deserved to be the first Khalifa more than Abu Bakr Siddiq. I would say, okay, fine. So what? And then what? And then what? I'm going even beyond the dispute or the problem between Ali and Muawiyah. And so what? until when we're going to remain stuck in this. Yeah. Let it be. And then we keep always talking about this scientist, this great scientist, and this are great. Yes, we should. And we should learn about them, and we should tell our children about them, and we should be proud of that. But that's not a substitution for achieving. That's not substitution for, making things happening now. And try to make up for that failure by being brag about history. And then, of course, this idea of bringing back or reviving history or reestablishing it, it's really ridiculous. Especially that's the system of governance has nothing to do with Islam. System of governance that was prevalent at the time of after the Khulafa Rashidin has nothing to do with Islam. That's not an Islamic system that we want to revive. It's a dynasty, it's a family that is governing, and it's an absolute power. There is one person who decides war and peace. There is one person who manages the treasury with no accountability, with no transparency. What kind of system you want to bring it back in? Anyway, I'm going to stop here.
I have a quick question. On the ayah that says, it's ayah 130, وَمَنْ يَرْغَبْ عَنْ مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ. Can you explain the word millata? You touched on something. You said this is not something genetic, and I like that. I guess angle, if you will, or viewpoint to the meaning of the word millata Ibrahim.
It's the way of Ibrahim alayhi salam. It's what he did. It's not like even if you are the son of Ibrahim alayhi salam, that doesn't give you any special status. And we have seen, and Quran mentioned this. We have seen Imra'at Nuh and Imra'at Lut did not help them. The wife of Nuh and the wife of Lut, the son of Nuh. It did not help him that he was the son of Nuh. So Quran reinforced this in many places, that it's not about being descendant of Ibrahim or claiming that you Arabs are the descendant of Ibrahim, and because the Kaaba is a house that was built by Ibrahim, and then you're surrounded with idols, and then you come up with things you make them part of your religion. That Ibrahim, that was not part of the way of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So if you deviate from the way of Ibrahim alayhi salam, you are not, even if you are genetically his descendant, but Ibrahim al-Anbiya are not what we inherit from the prophets is their mission and their message, and it's not just the being their descendant. So it didn't help the ankle of the Prophet ﷺ that he was his ankle. So this is a very essential idea in Quran and reoccurring, that it's not about who you are, whether you are Muslim, whether you are people of the book. There is no chosen people. There is no people who are better than others just because of who they are. And even when Quran mentions that the community of believers are special or the best communities sent to humanity, it was qualified in two ways. One, sent to humanity, which means to serve and to be role model, not to dominate, and then immediately qualified by the beautiful mission of promoting that which is good in society, and then resisting and advocating against anything that is wrong and evil and harmful. That's what makes it special. You abandon that, you lose the status. It's like the son of Nuh alayhi salam. He did not say, I'm the son of your prophet, so I have no. You chose to reject faith, and you didn't help you that you were the son of a great prophet. And Quran says, ضرب الله مثلا للذين كفروا امرأة نوح وامرأة لوط كانت تحت عبدين من عبادنا الصالحين فخانتهما يعني فلم يغني عنهما من الله شيئا ضرب الله مثلا الذين كفروا امرأة نوح وامرأة لوط. So and then on the other hand, the wife of Fir'aun, in the same verse, Quran tells us that the wife of Fir'aun alayhi salam had that very special status because of what she did.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr.
Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah.
One Jordanian scholar, he has TV show, probably millions of people follow him. What he said, they asked him why we don't make cars or airplanes. He said, Allah didn't create us for that reason. Allah created us to spread thinking, to spread huda, guidance. And the Western, our students, their job to make cars and science for us. This TV show, I know people here in the United States waiting for his TV talk every week to watch him in TV. What you are saying right now, the opposite, exactly the opposite of what he's saying. And you see nobody follows.
والله يا أخي, first of all, that's a disaster. يعني, I don't know even who he is, but that's a disaster to think this way.
He is Muhammad Nuh.
Who?
Muhammad Nuh. Sheikh Nuh Abu Khan. From the Urdun. Okay. Yeah, but
anyway, it's a disaster to spread this, especially among young people. And our people, mashallah, they are lazy. And they don't need to be made to be. And the people are not ambitious. They're not. They don't have high aspirations. They don't have even any guilt feeling that they are not making anything. And then the scholar comes and tells them, you know what? You shouldn't even feel guilty because that's not your job. And it's now for the following, Brother Abu Abdullah, our people are emotional and they tend to follow whoever tells them what they want to hear. And that's very common. If you want to be popular, the way is very clear. Yeah. You become one of those, what they call them, du'at al-jadud, the new whatever preachers. Tell people those nice stories and make them, soothing them, make them feel good, and then a little bit of spirituality, and then I mean, this is unfortunate. That's the nature of our people. They don't. I mean, it might be a human tendency in general, but probably it's more severe in our societies and culture. Is that people are emotional, and they'd rather hear what they want to hear, even if it leads nowhere, rather than being told the truth. Yeah. So I'm not surprised that these messages are there, because I know they are, and I know there are some books that even cause more harm than that. They even pave the way for people to go to extremism and terrorism and etc. It's very important. And the second part, it's popular. Usually things that are simplistic, things that are convenient, they are very popular. And you come to societies that are failing big time to make anything happen, and they are very marginal in this world. And you tell them that's not only okay, that's what you're supposed to be. And you are supposed to be in that situation. And what's the great comforting message? And we hear this message even over here. Yeah. We come to go to Jama'ah sometimes and find the Khatib say, Alhamdulillah, our community is in it's a great shape. Everything is fine. Islam is the fastest spreading religion. And Alhamdulillah, we're growing. And just because people had a meeting or Zoom meeting with Biden, it became like a huge achievement and histories. We're making history, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. These people are emotional, and they can be carried away by anything. And I mentioned last time, keep in mind that there were millions of Muslims in 1967, who went to sleep and every day checking whether Abdel Nasser took Israel and throw it in the sea. And then they woke up one day and found Israel in Cairo and in Damascus. So that's going to keep happening. I mean, we like motivational speakers and people who can arouse their emotions and make us feel that we are great, and either because of what is in history or because of this. This is very creative, by the way. This scholar did not even need to go to history. He was telling them that even now, with all this failure, you are doing great because that's your job. Your job is not to make anything happen, and your job is just to lead by nothing. Yeah. And we did not end up in this situation by coincidence. Yeah. We ended up because of this kind of scholars and because of the kind of the elite that we have, who are not really building any real awareness, who are really looking for popularity and to impress, and therefore trying to tell people what they want to hear, rather than telling people the brutal reality and the brutal facts, and try to make them feel responsible for what happened and feel responsible for changing it. That's a message that hardly anybody wants to hear. But that's Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, إن الرائد لا يكذب أهله. You don't. The ra'id is the one that the caravan sent to find out what is down the road. So when you come back, you tell people exactly what you see, even if it is an army, even if it is a dangerous place, even if you can. إن الرائد لا يكذب أهله.
Imam Suhail, thank you so much for sharing this wisdom. Yeah, my question is, I think in a place like here, sometimes it's difficult to find like a scholar whereby you can sit one-on-one to study Quran. A lot of times the scholars are very traditional in terms of the interpretation, and you find you cannot relate, and that's why I think for most youth, they're not really passionate about understanding the deen because of the lack of these teachers who are able to relate, and finding that one-on-one aspect of learning and being able to go out and teach, it's very hard. I don't know if there's a way to get, but I'd like to know about that. And another issue is that you find also parents from here who are still attached to making their kids learn the deen from their scholars back at home, like Pakistani, and you find they are very strict in the way they teach, and a lot of time you hear the children complaining that they're very like hateful to even learn the Quran, or they like it's the traditional way of strictness and fear, and rather than love of Allah, knowing that, or teaching in a patient way. So, and I don't know how to advise these parents, because a lot of time I try to tell them I don't think it's necessary. We need to get teachers who are from here, who know the culture and who can relate the deen to them. But unfortunately, some parents are still stuck with that mindset. So I think this is a big issue.
It's not limited to Pakistani or anything. It's very common.
Example, I mean, like
in our community, it's very common that unfortunately we are trying something that is very strange. It's something that I can understand. I mean, all of us, it's natural for a human being that you want your children to be like you. It's very natural to try to attach your children to your original, not only country, which is good, but also to original even culture and ways and scholars and everything. The tendency is normal, except that it's not effective. It's like many things in life that you have tendency to do them, but you should resist. You should restrain yourself from doing it. You should use your intellect. That you decided to settle here. You're raising your children for this society. You should try to help them become successful in the society and not to complicate their lives and create a tension inside them and create an identity crisis which would going to limit them big time from fulfilling and preventing them from fulfilling their potential. This religion, it's not an Arab religion. It's not a Pakistani religion. It's not an African religion. It's universal religion. It is a religion that is compatible with every culture in the world. And it was meant to be implemented and to produce a different personality and different product everywhere it settles. It is not meant for American Muslim to be like Mexican Muslim, like European Muslim, like African Muslim, like Asian Muslim, like Arab Muslim. It is not meant to be like this. It is wrong to try to do that, which is to take Islam with its culture and then take it all over the world to implement it with the culture and keep it as a foreign religion. It is not meant to be like this. So even though it is a normal tendency, a spontaneous tendency, we should restrain ourselves and resist that temptation and focus on our children on the religion and let it be okay. They're going to be different in terms of their culture. Focus on right and wrong from religious perspective, not from this is not the way we were raised. This is not the way we did when I was young. Even in your original country, people are not doing the same, are not conducting themselves the same way you were raised. Things have changed. Never mind thousands of miles away. So when you try to fight that battle, which is to make your child a Muslim and an Arab or a Pakistani, like the way you came, you risk to lose the whole thing. That your child may reject the whole package. But if you stick to the religion and you leave the culture alone, that your child born and raised in America is going to be an American. That's a losing battle, and there is nothing wrong with this. I mean, it's not. I mean, on the day of judgment, it's not going to go by nationality yet. So you teach your child their roots, yes, and of course above this religion, yes. You teach your child that you are an American Muslim from this origin or from that origin, fine. You take them to that place to see their roots, great. But don't try to make them a Syrian while they're born and raised in America. It's not going to happen. I mean, why you're fighting the losing battle, man? It's not going to happen, and it's wrong. And it's going to, hurt them in terms of their success in integrating in society and being successful. Same thing goes for religion. I mean, to teach your children or attach them to a scholar overseas, that's not very effective way. Because this scholar overseas did not live in America. Our scholars here are speaking a language that is not relevant for our children. Our children, when they attend Jum'ah, they attend Halaqah, the topics that are being discussed are not relevant for them yet. Never mind talking or listening to somebody overseas who might be using a different example and addressing different problems that do not exist here. And then it's like, early on, I think things have changed now, but early on when Islamic schools have started, they were bringing textbooks from overseas. So the example, the way people are talking, the stories, it's very different from here. So we're confusing people. Now that should be, that temptation should be resisted, and we should be logic that because you decided to settle here, to have your children born and raised here, there is consequences. There are consequences, which means that your child is going to be an American, and that's nothing wrong with this. There is nothing inherently wrong with any society in the world. In every society in the world has a lot of good things and bad things. And by the way, in this society, more good things than in most Muslim societies, unfortunately. Whether it is the system, whether the way people are interacting. So we have to, and then for the Quran, don't wait for any scholar. Quran, it's an individual effort. Everybody has to try. When people came here and they didn't have the language and they knew that they had to master the language to succeed, they did not wait. They did everything they could to. If anybody is serious about learning the Quran, you should make the first steps, start studying, and then ask those who know more. And then nowadays, with a little effort, you can search for the meaning of any word and any verse, and you can quickly establish a good, reliable sources that you consult, and you filter out anything that is ridiculous or nonsense, and you can learn Quran. I'm not saying totally on your own, but everybody should not wait or find an excuse that they didn't find a good halaqah or a good scholar or a good teacher of the Quran.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. If nobody has any questions, we see you next month, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Dr. Nushi, a quick question, because we have the Eid coming up next weekend. Anything you want to discuss regarding the days of the Hijjah and how to conduct ourselves? In addition, are we going to have a lecture next weekend?
I mean, about the lecture, I will leave it for you, you and Abu Abdullah and the whole group. For the Hajj, Jazakallah khairan, I should have done this. These are some of the best days of the year. They're very equivalent to the 10 nights of Ramadan, last 10 nights. Basically, one of those seasons. Highly recommended to take advantage of them in terms of good deeds, and the same good deeds that we were always talking about. It's spending more time on the Quran and with the dhikr and dua and fasting if you can, especially of course the day of Arafah. The day of Arafah, which is the day before Eid al-Adha. The other thing is the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam. I strongly recommend that we all refresh our memory about it and we make it like study it collectively at home with the family and with the children, etc. That this is a great story of devotion, great family who is completely devoted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, raising their child that way, passing that humongous test, being dedicated to Allah wherever he was sent, wherever he needed to be, wherever it was needed to be, he was there. So it's really amazing, and we should always remember that this is someone Allah called him his close friend. وَاتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ خَلِيلًا. So it's important to do that. And I know we all have some casual understanding of the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, but go and search some verses and search some sources and then educate yourself more, and especially teach our children what is this Eid al-Adha, why we are celebrating it after thousands of years, because of that man, because of that story, because of that family. So whatever you want to decide for Sunday, I'm fine.
جزاك الله خير.
وإياكم إن شاء الله. جزاكم الله خير.
Okay, brother, Dr. says, I think no class next Sunday, so you can have a rest.
Okay, no class.
See you the Sunday after that. Okay,
إن شاء الله. جزاكم الله خير إن شاء الله.
السلام عليكم.
السلام عليكم.